Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, the newest anime series on Netflix based on the comic book by Brian Lee O'Malley. So, I've never read the comic book, but I am a fan of the movie that was made several years after the comic ended. I believe it's several years after it ended. It came out in 2010 by Edgar Wright. Really great movie. Really enjoy it. Fantastic. So I was really looking forward to this anime series when it was announced. And one of the things that I really liked that they did was that they got the entire cast from the movie to star in this anime series, which was really exciting. I thought maybe at most they might get the main characters, but that they got like everyone was really awesome. Especially since a lot of them are like, when they made the movie, they weren't like the biggest stars. I think they were well known, but now some of them exploded. So I went into this with high expectations and was wondering how they were going to adapt the story, as I have seen it before. Like I said, I haven't read the comic, but I've seen the movie, and it more or less, from my understanding, adapts the comic book story. Of course, the comic is like 6 volumes, and the movie is just one movie, so you have to condense a lot. So I thought they were going to flesh out a lot of things, and honestly I was happily surprised about how they went doing this anime. I'm not going to talk spoilers right now. I'm going to talk spoilers in a little bit, but this show was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I loved the voice acting the cast did. Mostly a great job. I just loved hearing their voices again. Like I said, I really liked the movie. I actually rewatched it last week in anticipation for watching the show. They have some amazing fight scenes. Like, they have some good fight scenes in the movie, but since this is animation, they can do a lot of crazy things. So they have some really cool, fun fight scenes. One, I think it's in the 3rd episode, that I absolutely love. Lots of cool special effects, and the story is just fantastic. Absolutely loved it. There's a lot of awesomeness just going on in this show. I freaking love it. So I give the show a 9 out of 10. It's almost a 10. It's like right there, almost a 10. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of awesomeness going on in this show. If you love the movie, if you love the comic, I believe you will love the show. So if you haven't, or if you haven't even read the comic or the movie, definitely just go check this out. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun action, story-driven anime. Not like a deep story, but it's a fun, funny, kind of interesting, quirky story, which I absolutely love. That's one of the things I love about the movie, is just like quirky and fun and interesting. So they get a lot of that stuff across in the anime, and sometimes even better. So like I said, it's a lot of fun. Go check it out. So I'm going to talk spoilers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So if you've seen the show, you know that it gets kind of crazy. So it starts off, the first episode starts off normally with us being introduced to the characters, and then Scott meeting Ramona, and then going on their date and kind of starting to get interested in each other. And it goes all the way to the first battle where Scott's band, Sex Bomb, is going to play, and Matthew Patel shows up to fight Scott. Like I said, if you've read the comic and you've seen the movie, you know what happens. Scott beats him pretty easily, but in a surprise twist, Scott ends up losing and dying in the first episode, which just threw me for a loop. Like, it was a big twist that I did not see coming. Like I said earlier, I thought they were just going to retell the story we have seen before, but no, they took a chance to tell a different story. Like I said, I felt like I blinked and I was like, wait, did Scott just die? Like, I was so surprised. It was like I said, a big twist. I don't think I've been so surprised in a form of media or show in a very long time. It just caught me off guard. But it was a good surprise. So in the next episode, we pick up, they're having Scott's funeral. It's just an empty casket with a little bit of change that was left over after he died. And, everyone is really, really sad about it. Like, he freaking died and people somewhat care about him. They're not overly sad, but, they're having a funeral. And we pick up at the 7 Deadly Exes headquarters. Gideon, They're all there having a meeting. They were secretly invited by one of the members, who turns out to be Matthew Patel, the first evil ex-boyfriend. And he invited everyone because he feels like the organization needs to change. He has this boost in confidence after beating Scott. And even though Ramona was just like, yeah, I'm not going to date you just because you murdered this guy I was, interested in and liked. So he goes there and he's just like, what was your plan? I defeated, her new boyfriend and I did not get to date her. And Gideon, the seventh evil boyfriend, was just like, well, yeah, I was hoping that you guys would defeat the new boyfriend and I would become, her love interest again. And they're like, how does that, how do we get any value out of that? How does that help us? So they're like, this organization is garbage. So Matthew Patel challenges Gideon to a fight. He's like, if I win, I get everything. I get your business, I get the league, I get everything. Gideon's like, fine, if I win, I get to kill you pretty much. So like, fine, deal. And they have this really cool fight, and Matthew Patel ends up winning. Like, they end up on the top of the building, and Gideon's just hanging off on the ledge, and he's forced to sign the paperwork that says that Matthew Patel owns everything. And so there's a big change up, like, again, right away. There's just a lot of crazy things happening. So the league kind of just separates and they go in different directions because, obviously it wasn't working. In this episode, we also get Ramona figuring out that Scott isn't dead. She's traveling through her subspace bridge and she hears Scott calling her name, and she realizes that he's not dead, he's just missing. So the next few episodes is her trying to figure out what happened to Scott and who kidnapped him, because she ends up figuring out, when it's in the third episode, she finds a video, or she gets a video from this crime scene showing that Scott was taken through a machine or a portal and then, kidnapped, and everyone else just thought that he was killed really quick by Matthew Patel. So in the third episode, she starts investigating people who she thinks might have kidnapped him. So the first person she goes to is, she goes to a video store to talk to Kim, one of Scott's ex-girlfriends, thinking that maybe she might have done something. And Kim's like, no, we had our issues, but, I never really hated Scott. I just kind of hated how we ended, and I didn't kidnap the guy. And while they're at the video store, they're attacked by the fourth evil ex, Roxy. So Roxy and Ramona get in this big fight, which is the fight that I was talking about earlier that I absolutely love. They're fighting all throughout this video store, and they're going into old movies and stuff like that. And it's this really cool visual fight that is a lot of fun and very interesting. That like I said, it's just a great fight. Like, definitely go check it out. So Ramona ends up beating Roxy, and Roxy's just upset. She's like, just kill me then. And Ramona's like, no, sorry, I thought I heard something. She's like, no, I'm not going to kill you. And so they talk about their past and why Roxy's upset. She's like, you just abandoned me, we were college roommates and more, and I really cared about you, and one day you just left like it was nothing. And so she's just like, Ramona apologizes. She's like, I'm sorry, I kind of see now that it was kind of shitty the way I left you. Because we have a flashback and it shows Ramona moving out and Roxy just being like really upset. But instead of Ramona comforting her and being like, look, sorry, and being nice to her, she just kind of like smiles and leaves, which is kind of a shitty thing to do, but people are bad at goodbyes. So Ramona apologizes. She apologizes during the fight and Roxy accepts it, but she's still upset. But they end up moving past it, and Roxy's just like, okay, it's fine. I forgive you, and I'm moving on. Like I said, she was just hurt from how that relationship ended, which is the big kind of theme of this series, that Ramona is discovering that her past doesn't define her, and also, she's what she did in the past. While it sucked, it's not necessarily her. She's not a bad person because she ended relationships in bad ways. She's just not capable of ending them properly, which is, in real life, there's a lot of people who can't end relationships properly, It's awkward, it's hard to express emotions. You just kind of want to leave, as shitty as it is, which it is shitty, but that's life. Those are some people. So this is where the fourth episode ends, and she realizes that she's probably gonna have to confront all her exes to see if they were the ones who kidnapped Scott. So in the fourth episode, she goes to Lucas Lee, the second evil ex, and he's shooting a movie, which these next two episodes get very meta. They're shooting a movie about Scott Pilgrim Get a Life, which is pretty much the movie that that was actually made in real life. So young Neo was writing a play, and someone finished the screenplay for him to make this movie. So now they're making it. So Ramona goes to this movie set where Lucas Lee is making this movie. Like I said, it's very meta, and she ends up trying to talk to him, and eventually she does talk to him, and she also kind of confronts their past about how he was just obsessed with her because he really cared about her, and she was the only one who actually appreciated him, but she ended up just kind of ditching him for her her third evil ex, and it really broke his heart. Like, he was so upset, and he's like, it broke my heart and it broke my board. Like, he smashes his skateboard, and he's like, I was never the same. He was like, that day defined who I was. He ended up being a shitty person. He shouldn't have let it define him that way, but it kind of did. She just kind of left them like nothing. So again, she's confronting her exes, and they're confronting their past, and they're both kind of, every time she meets an ex, they're both kind of trying to move past that, and they kind of do. Lucas Lee ends up losing all his fame. He gets fired from the movie. He loses his agent and everything, and pretty much becomes poor, but it kind of ends up working out in his favor because he's kind of happier just living a normal life. So it's kind of the fourth episode. In the fifth episode, we're still in the movie set, and this time Todd, her third evil ex, has taken over Lucas Lee's part because he was playing Scott Pilgrim. So now he's playing Scott Pilgrim, and again, Ramona's just trying to talk to him and figure out, like, hey, did you kidnap them? Because she figures out that Scott was taken through a vegan portal, and the only vegan she knows is her ex, Todd. So a bunch of shenanigans happening with Wallace on the movie studio set, and eventually she's able to talk to him, and he's just like, no, I didn't kidnap Scott. And they figure out that portal was a really good portal, and his portals aren't as nice. So she's like, okay, I guess it wasn't you. They also kind of moved past his trauma, that she also just kind of took off on him, like something she tends to do. And so we pick up in the fifth episode, which this one is more focused on Gideon. So her seven evil ex, which is actually the worst guy. He was actually kind of an abusive jerk from what we understand. Everyone else, they turned into evil exes, but Gideon just kind of seemed like he was just a jerk from the start. He was manipulative and all kinds of bad things towards her. But he lost, like I said, all his fortune and everything, and he ends up going to live with Julie, a girl that he knew from high school and one of Scott's friends. And his real name is something Goose, I can't remember. And he was a nerd back in high school, but he was very intelligent. So after high school, like, he asked a girl out, and he ended up getting denied, so he leaves, and he changes himself to become Gideon, rich and kind of a jerk, an evil person, which he's still kind of evil on the inside, but he just became extra evil with his change. So we follow Gideon for a little bit. Lucas Lee shows up, and he's like, I lost everything just like you, so I just wanted to get some advice from you. And Gideon's like, the only thing I can offer you is friendship, which is a really great moment. And then the two of them are just destroying Julie's house, playing paintball and skating and all kinds of things, which is a lot of fun and cool, fun scene. Then Julie and Ramona show up. They're like, what the heck's going on in here? And Gideon ends up talking to Ramona, and he's just like, no, I didn't take her or take Scott. I have no reason to. I just kind of gave up on my evil schemes because, I got depressed. And they notice a robot in the corner of the room, which has been following Ramona throughout, like, every single episode. So by the end of this episode, the sixth episode, Ramona figures out who kidnapped Scott. And it turns out it was their 6th and 5th evil ex, the twins. So she's like, I don't know why they took him or how they took him, but I know it was them because that robot was following them, and he was there at the concert, and he's the one who opened up the vegan portal. Because what's stronger than a vegan? A human vegan? A robot vegan. Which is kind of hilarious. So the 7th episode, we kind of are told what happened. So the twins did end up stealing Scott, but they did it because of their bro, older Scott. So it turns out older Scott, an older version of Scott, traveled back in time to kidnap himself from stopping himself from beating all the exes because he feels like it's one of the worst mistakes that happened in his life. Essentially, this is kind of a sequel to the original series. So what happens at the end of the original timeline is that Scott and Ramona become an item and they fall in love and they end up getting married and they're very happy. But something happens in the relationship that causes some bumps and frictions. So they separate for a little bit and this kind of destroys Scott. And Wallace jokingly says, like, oh, wouldn't it be, you should just get a time machine and travel back in time and stop yourself from dating her. So he takes it seriously and he actually does that. So he kidnaps his younger self and takes him to the future and tells him that, it's pretty much, awful that everything that happens after me and Ramona together, which is not true. He just kind of gets it in his head. He's bad with relationships again, which is kind of the theme of the show. So he's just kind of going crazy, where in reality Ramona still loves him, but she just needed a break from his shenanigans because he's still kind of this childish person that hasn't grown. So eventually young Scott is sent back to the past by older Ramona because she knows about everything that was happening. She's the one who went back in time and wrote the screenplay for the movie because she wanted Scott to know how their love story happened. She's like, even if it didn't happen, she's like, I wanted him to know that at one point in our lives or at one world that we fell in love and how it happened. So we pick up in the last episode where Scott and Ramona, they try to kiss, but there's like this big force field stopping them from kissing, which this actually happens at the end of the 6th episode, or the 7th episode, because there's only 8 episodes. So the 8th episode is them trying to figure out who's stopping us from kissing. So they go to this big musical based on Scott Pilgrim, because Knives and one of Scott's band members kind of tricked or convinced Matthew Patel with his new fortune to create the play based on the Scott Pilgrim movie. That didn't happen because he was this big theater nerd, and he's like, okay, as long as I get to play Scott Pilgrim, which is a lot of fun. So they go to the premiere of the Scott Pilgrim musical, again, very meta and very fun, to figure out who put a force field to prevent him from kissing. So they go and they confront all their exes, all her evil exes, and they're like, no, we moved on, Ramona. We're not obsessed with you anymore. We're not your evil exes. We're just your exes. And so they're like, who did this? So they go watch the play, and during the play, this big energy thing absorbs her and all the exes, and I don't know where they're in the subspace area, I think. And it turns out that again, the evil mastermind behind this was older Scott. Actually, a much older Scott. He's 10 years older than the future Scott we met in the last episode. And he's super buff and Ryu with a bandana and everything. And he's just like, I told you not to date Ramona, and I'm here to stop you by any means necessary. So they get into this cool epic fight, which is fantastic. And he ends up defeating all the exes, and then it's just Ramona and Scott left. And they're kind of losing because this guy's very powerful. But then even older Ramona comes from the future, and she confronts Scott. She's just like, where have you been for the last 10 years? He's like, we broke up and I'm trying to stop that from happening. She's like, look, I still loved you. I just needed a little bit of space, and you went crazy, traveled back in time to fight your younger self and younger me. It's like, what's wrong with you? And Ramona ends up accepting her feelings, and older Ramona, younger Ramona fuse and become Super Ramona, and they send older Scott back to the past. And older Ramona talks to Scott. She's like, look, the past, all of those things I did were bad, but they don't define who I am, and they're not going to define my future relationships. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. She's like, but you also need to help me with that. And then she tells Scott that my younger self is gonna have a hard time telling you, but I love you. And then they teleport from there, and they're back in the show, the musical, and the musical ends, and everyone's happy. This is pretty much the end of the show. We have an epilogue that shows everyone. All the exes are more or less good and happy. Scott and Ramona are also happy. Like, this looks like it's going to be a better future than what was set up at the end of the original timeline. But one thing, we do get a post-credit scenes of Goose or Gideon and Julie planning some evil deeds. So I don't know if there's going to be a second season or not, but it kind of sets it up that maybe there will be. So that's the show. It was very fantastic. I really loved it. Go check it out if you haven't watched it. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, I was really surprised by the twist, and it's probably going to upset some people, but I think it really works, and it makes it a really interesting story because it's not rehashing what we already know. It's kind of, expanding upon it and kind of fleshing some things out, and it's a lot of fun. There's probably less fights because he's not fighting all the 7 X's, but it's still a lot of quirkiness and a lot of coolness and a lot of craziness and a lot of fun. So definitely go check it out. Like I said, a 9 out of 10, fantastic show. If you watched it, what do you think? Did you hate the twist? Did you love it? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.